Let's do it. We got to do it for the clout. We got to do it for the memes and everything else, right? A little late to the party. Sorry. I know everyone's pretty much left. I'm sorry. Kind of late, but it's okay. AOC, Israel, and who controls whom? So let's get into it. AOC voted present to a bill to provide $1 billion to Israel for the Iron Dome, or for improvements to the Iron Dome. Now, tangentially, this is about AOC and her crying and her eventually having to give up the fact that her district is going to be rezoned, and it's going to include areas like Scarsdale, which are very richy, that have a lot of Jewish constituents in it. And it won't just include the Bronx and Queens. So she feels that she's going to get blown the fuck out. And that's what a lot of people are talking about. But anywho, beyond that, I'm already done talking about AOC. But these improvements to the Iron Dome, because of the recent Israel-Palestine dust-up that occurred, what was it, about 2 months ago? We've seen that this whole thing, like I say, our missiles are not great. Let's be honest. The United States missile technology is behind the curve, much the same way as our jet technology, much the same way as our intelligence gathering and our communications. They are behind. And just be realistic about it. It's not a neocon point. I'm just saying it is the truth. Fact is that the U.S. tried to put in the F-22. They've tried to put in these other, aircraft, and they haven't done as well as the good or reliable F-15 or the F-16. It's a simple fact of the matter. But the fact is that the F-15, F-16, this is stuff from the 1970s. Yeah, it's been updated, sure. But, the Patriot missile is not as good as the S-300. The Iranians are making steps ahead. They're making good progress. The fact is that Hezbollah gets support from Iran and can still have the potential to keep Israel at bay. The thing is this, it all comes down to who controls whom. Now, I'll give some lip service to the idea that the U.S. controls Israel. I'll give some lip service to it. The idea that Jewish Americans can go to Israel pretty much carte blanche. They can go whenever they want to. They can go to the Wailing Wall or move to Israel for a brief time, maybe go to yeshiva, and then come back. They can even have land that is given to them because they are Jewish. This is a whole big thing, right? Where that one chunky guy from New York or whatever, who was anti-Trump or whatever, and now he's given like an apartment that was taken from a Palestinian family. I can't think of the name of it, but I don't care because the name is meaningless to me. So you can say America controls Israel, but I would say it's the other way around. Now, of course, people can say, oh, but that's not true. Oh, but this and that. The thing is, look, I think Israel is perfectly capable. And I say this without, a hint of anti-Semitism or anything else. I think that Israel is perfectly capable of making independent weapons without the United States. They have created weapons like the Galil. They have created weapons like the Uzi. They have created weapons like, of course, as we've seen, the Tavor bullpup rifle. They have, created, tanks like the Merkava, this and that. Now, of course, you can say, oh, but these aren't as good. Or what. I'm not going to get into that. But the thing is, though, these are reliable weapons. Now, of course, you can go ahead and say, yeah, but there's no domestically produced Israeli aircraft, as far as I know. I could be wrong, but defense aircraft. It's still the F-16. And of course they'll say, but we still use the M4s and whatnot. You don't see them with Tavors and all the time. Look, I get that. I'm just saying is that I'm trying to play both sides here. All right, I'm trying to sit on the fence and try to balance myself like I'm a Walenda. That's the family that does tightrope walks across big buildings and stuff like that. The Walenda family. Look them up. Now, of course, you can say, oh, but Israel gets all this money and everything else like that from the United States. I would say yes, but Israel gets money from reparations from Germany. I'm sure they get money from Poland. I'm sure they get money from Russia to a certain point. Of course, you can go ahead and say, oh, well, Putin's a Zionist. I'm not going to get into that. What I would say, though, is I'm sure that, yes, far and away, the United States is the biggest contributor to the state of Israel and to its defense. Yes. But I would also say is that the United States is merely a host. Now, that's not a defense of the United States as an entity. No, I'm just saying is that it's lazy thinking to me to be like, oh, well, Israel. I mean, I'll tell you this. This is my assumption of the whole U.S. controls Israel, Israel controls the U.S. sort of thing. Would Israel fall apart tomorrow without U.S. support? I would say no. They would be hurt by it, sure. But to think that there wouldn't be some backup plan, I think is ignoring the acumen of finance in Israel, in my opinion. Now, of course, I'm not, maybe that's somewhat anti-Semitic when I'm saying it that way, but wink, wink, we got to be careful. I think it's just a silly argument to be like, oh, well, the U.S. controls Israel and all this sort of thing because of their policies and whatnot, and only if Jews united with the Palestinians. It's just like, the thing is this. Much like the United States, that immigrants are considered the backbone of American democracy. So a Honduran immigrant who genuinely believes in freedom and democracy that the United States preaches is much more valuable than an American citizen who's been here for 200 years. Generally speaking, that's how it's seen today. That's how it's promoted. So I think you could say the same about Israel to a point. Is that the recent immigrants to Israel, the Mizrahi Jews, I know that they're basically African Jews or Ethiopian Jews and others are considered, of course, they endure a lot of racism. But the thing is, though, who are the ones that are mostly in the IDF? Ashkenazim and, like Sephardic Jews? Or is it Mizrahi and, Ethiopian Jews? I know there's a name in Hebrew. I just can't think of it. But, right? So there are parallels between the United States and Israel. Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. There is racism. There is, religious extremism. Sure. Sure, there is. And you do have evangelicals who will go to Israel and LARP and all that and have their little farms and stuff like that. But they're never going to be Jewish. That's the whole thing, evangelicals. You're never going to be Jewish. Sorry. Anywho, I think it's such a silly thing. The Iron Dome, to me, this $1 billion is not going to go purely to the Iron Dome. It's going to go to other places. It's that simple. I just personally, I don't know what to believe, to be honest with you, but I think it's just silly to be like, oh, well, Israel is this one thing and it's nothing else, Where am I going with this? I think AOC is just a mere pawn, I think, at the end of the day. She is somebody who has given lip service to some sort of socialism. And I think now the bloom is off the rose, I think, as they say. The honeymoon is over. And I think there's the AOC simps that are out there that are going to continue to defend her and say, but what about what she did this? And, what about that? The simps are still going to be out there. The squad simps who want reformism and who want to oppose, to a point, LARPers who think that revolution is around the corner, or equally the moronic third party folks. People, I'll admit this. Jimmy Dore, while he makes some salient points, in my opinion, at the end of the day, is a grifter. And I think that he pushes for this whole People's Party bullshit, which is not going to go anywhere. This third party nonsense is not going to go anywhere. It's not going to help anybody. I think that he serves as somebody who is a thorn in the side of lefties. Same thing as the gray zone. They serve as a thorn in the side to dab on folks. And it's giving the left a bad image. That's why I like them. I'll be honest with you. I'll give support to people like Max Blumenthal and people like Jimmy Dore far more than I would give to, an AOC or a what's the guy from Georgia's name? I can't think of it. But anywho, holding on to these folks who give the appearance of being, progressive, I think it's funny. Just an off topic. I'm just going to throw this in at the end. It's a random grenade, but the Black Caucus does not want to go down to the border talking about Haitians. They don't want to. And we've seen, of course, as my video, my brief little meme video, kind of, like I said, I do admit that video was just, it was purposely used as a hand grenade to kind of, and it was kind of basic, but I was just like, screw it, let's go for it. Seeing Tariq Nasheed, who's just like, I don't want any immigration. I'm just like, oh, man. But there's a real concern, right? This whole idea of Pan-Africanism that, anybody with melanated skin is my brother. That kind of went out with Malcolm X, Now, of course, we see that, Africans do not see the same things as black folks in the U.S. They don't see eye to eye because they're seen as coons and everything else, right? They're not seen as legitimate black people fighting for the black struggle, Boy, this has gone on for too long. I'll just finish up with this. Israel is not going anywhere. I think that Hezbollah serves as a strong force to counter Israel. I think that they have learned much from, at least according to my reading about guerrilla warfare from Mao Zedong. I think that they serve as a force to shunt the power of Zionism. And I think that it also serves as a blunt, as a shunt and as a sword, arguably, to I'm just gonna go out and say it, but the sort of the Sunni Salafist beliefs that, we're going to get support from the U.S., but because we want to dab on Shias more, we are going to support, we're going to get American support because we hate Shias that much. And to me, that's sad. Feel as you want to about Sunnis and Shias and the battles between them and say, oh, well, Shias are LARPers and they do all sorts of weird stuff. And Sunni Islam doesn't do that. To me, is that you're part of the same family. You should be able to try to work it out, at least to some degree. And I think to a point, Sunnis and Shias do that. And hopefully it's none of my business. But this video covered so much other than what is in the title. I covered that maybe for maybe 5 minutes of it. I've talked far more about Hezbollah. I've talked far more about bigger issues in this. But that's why you listen to me, right? I talk about other things and I go off and ramble like a boomer because I am a boomer. I'm rapidly approaching 40, and I admit it. I'm just like, yeah, I am approaching boomerdom. I'm going to read these books and try to at least catch up with some memes, but I know to a point is that a lot of my beliefs have stagnated in some way. I'm going to read Mao a bit and try to understand it. You'll notice even when I was reading part 2, I kind of grew tired of a little bit of it, but I'm going to finish. I've tried to provide a little bit more info, and I've skipped parts of it, but I'm going to try to remain steadfast. I'm going to try to be interesting when I read it. For this last, 60 pages or so of the book, something like that. Well, let me see here, because we ironically finished on page 88. Yeah, we finished on page 88, and we're going to go to page 114. Oh, okay. So less than that. Yeah. So let me see here. Let me do some math here because I can't do it in my head because I'm so retarded. 88, 26 pages. Okay, so 26 pages is all we have left. I could have finished it up, but I don't know. I already went too long, but yeah, we will finish up the 26 pages tomorrow after I get off work. Presumably, I won't have to work late as I did today. But anyway, we will finish up Mao Zedong and on guerrilla warfare. This book was translated. I'm just for record here, but this was translated and with an introduction by Brigadier General Samuel B. Griffith of the United States Marine Corps. This was a book that came out originally in 1961 by Frederick A. Prager. I wonder if there's a relation. Printed in the United States. Like I said, I do find it interesting, and obviously a lot of the stuff about, working with bandits, what we would call the lumpen proletariat, but then having a dedicated force trying to balance out, if you will, kind of the yin and yang, as the book kind of talks about, trying to balance out a legitimate regular army versus a smaller group of folks who, attack the rear and perform as partisans, right? Who will, attack the rear areas and attack communications, this and that. Get some stragglers, this and that, and try to get the Chinese people on your side. Now, of course, he hasn't said necessarily what it means to be political, necessarily, what that means in particular, what Maoism was, but hopefully if I read a little bit more, I can get that picture. Anywho, I've gone on far too long, but I will finish up those things, and I'm going to finish regardless. But yeah, I think I'll keep it there. Anywho, I hope you'll enjoy this, so see you later. Goodbye.